everyone, welcome to the episode 22 of SoLeadSaturday. The guest we have today, Triveni Gandhi. She took her prior education in political sciences, but currently she is working as a data scientist at DataIKU. I remember my incident, like when I did meet her first time, that during the Open Data Science conferences, actually she was one of the keynote speakers. This is how I know her. So let's hear her career journey. How did she find her passion into the data field and manage to be one of the leaders in the data space? So thank you so much, Triveni, for being my guest on Solid Saturday podcast. Really appreciate your time on the Friday evening.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So to begin with, actually, as I said in the introduction, that you took your prior education in the political sciences. So how was that actually, being in the different study group?
Yeah, so I came to data science in a very different way. I did a PhD in political science, but I realized towards the end of my time that towards the end of my degree that I wasn't really getting the feeling that I was actually putting a real world impact out. And so I decided that I wanted to do something that was more maybe in the nonprofit, maybe in like the government or even business sectors.
Mm-hmm.
So then I thought, okay, I need to probably have more technical skills, more of the kind of skills that will be useful for me in the real world. And so I had started by learning some R. I learned statistics with Stata, and
Mm-hmm.
then I switched to R to make some nice graphics, and then that kind of took off, and then led me down to Python, and sort of led me to where I am now. So it was very much. I did want to be a data scientist. I knew that that was something I was gunning for, but it was also very much by chance and sort of luck of the draw that certain things ended up where they did.
Yeah, so you found your interest actually while pursuing your education in the political sciences, and as you said as well, that you want to be something that is related to the real world as well, like.
Right.
So talking more about that interest actually, so what steps did you take to achieve that kind of a skill set in your profession?
Mm. So I did think about applying to some boot camps, the data science boot camps, but
Mm-hmm.
then I ended up getting like a short-term job at the time that I would have had to start the boot camp. So I had to go for the job, which was good because then I got some experience on my resume.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in my previous job to DataIKU,
Mm-hmm.
I took the initiative to take this course on Coursera, just Introduction to Machine Learning with Python. I mean, there are so many courses, there's so many places.
Mm-hmm.
You can find the one that fits your needs, but I just thought this one looked good and it was relatively
Mm-hmm.
cheap. So I thought, okay, this is good. I did that. I started doing little side projects on my own, um, working with like friends on things, and I just sort of building out a skill set really of how do I take a question or some
Mm-hmm.
interesting data set and make some meaning from it.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, actually, you did a couple of certifications as well, so
Right.
that's great actually. So that is something value add to your profile always. Moving towards your volunteering experience as well, as you already mentioned that you participated in the boot camps and everything. So did that volunteering experience with the data kind also help you to get into the pursue your passion or the interest?
Yes, I think the data kind work was really great because it introduced me to a lot more people in this field.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave me some sort of like sense of community there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also got to see how do these problems actually work in the real world, right? Like, it's very easy for us to go to Kaggle and download some data set and whatever, but to really be able to say, okay, this is the data, it's very messy, or it has these problems, or we need to solve this answer. That's the kind of experience that's very, very beneficial.
Yeah, that is very valid point. Actually, I can also relate to that. That Kaggle data is very clean. It is good to start with, but definitely you need something that is real. What is happening in the industries is more over like a lot of efforts on the raw data preparation itself. So definitely that is a valid point to mention that you should have that kind of exposure when you are entering into the world, when you are upscaling your skills.
Mhm.
Uh, moving towards one more of your interesting experience that I found is that, you worked as a data scientist consultant actually
Mhm.
before working as a data scientist. So when you see these two different roles, right, data scientist consultant is more or like a middleware where you are dealing with both the sides, IT plus the business. And when you see in the data scientist side, it might be with all the collaboration still, but still it is different. It is little more inclined towards IT than maybe business. But I would like to ask you actually how you differentiate the roles and responsibilities between these two roles.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny. I think that title of data science consultant is for that role that I was having at the time was actually it was a data scientist role, and now I would say I'm much more in a data scientist consultant role.
Mhm,
Because DataIKU, we sell a software for data science, but we also sell professional services. So we can come in and help people with their projects and get them get the ball rolling on things that they need help with.
mhm,
So I think the main thing is that the data science consultant is able to move in and out of projects very quickly and maybe has sort of a breadth of knowledge, even if it's not very deep.
mhm,
But then the data scientist is very much embedded in a team that's working on specific types of business problems.
mhm,
And yeah, there is an IT side to it, but it really is more about the value add of that analysis to the business question, to the end users who are not data scientists. They need to know, how does this data help me make a better decision or change my behavior or whatever I need to do. So I think that's a key difference there. But in both cases, you are delivering value back to a business purpose, right? And even if maybe you're coming in to do support for architecture, right, machine learning architecture or DevOps around that, it's still with the goal of maintaining good systems to deliver good results back to the business side.
yeah. So just to add into that actually question, when we say data scientist, right, do you find that gap as well? How do you work on the domain knowledge when you are new to that particular domain? Because lots of students ask me that question. So,
So I think now we're seeing a trend more towards having experience in a specific industry,
mm-hmm,
less so all the different tooling, right? Because one, the tooling changes so rapidly.
mm-hmm,
Two, if you need to know something, if you need to learn something, you can go and learn it very quickly. But
mm-hmm,
the kind of knowledge that you get in industry experience, knowing the ins and outs of machinery manufacturing or banking or finance or whatever your interest is, that is really valuable because that lets you actually make more sense of the data, more sense of the analysis. You don't, if you give me a data set of like some sort of financial indicators, yes, I can probably go and research and do some crazy economics model.
mm-hmm,
But is that really going to be more beneficial than a very simple and clear analysis that cuts to the question, that gets to the point? And so I think we're starting to see a shift into more industry related
mm-hmm,
expertise, and people transitioning from that into data science. So I would say, for people coming into this space, don't be afraid of like the title data analyst. First of all, data analyst, data scientist, data engineer, yes, they all do have different meanings,
mm-hmm,
but they're all in the same space.
yeah.
And, getting the experience of understanding how this data impacts my industry or works in my company
Mm-hmm.
is way more valuable than like any sort of, like
Mm.
machine learning course that you can do on the weekend, right?
That is very important. Like, whenever you are applying something, actually, it is more important that what can be driven from that. Like, what are the insights that you can value add to the business. So definitely that is the skill actually, which can differentiate between the different roles. Actually, data scientist is specific to that, which is towards the decision making, which can help business to make a better decision. So I remember actually your keynote speak was also around that actually. So trying to tell people that there are multiple roles, not only just data analyst or data scientist, there are all more like a production roles as well. Would you just like to list out those roles actually?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are roles that don't exist yet, right? Or names for roles that we don't even know what will be in
Mhm.
5 years, right? Because what, 5 years ago, data scientist was this unknown thing,
Yeah.
right? Well, maybe now it's maybe 6 years, 6, 7 years. But it was an unknown thing. And so now we have a new set of opportunities ahead of us, with changes in the global economy and things that are going on worldwide now. You can imagine that there will be a difference. And so, I mean, obviously the traditional role is always going to be like data analyst or data engineer, someone who's doing like pipelining of data. The analyst may be doing more like more descriptive understanding and analytics. Theoretically, the scientist is doing like, predictions and statistical modeling. Although I think that there are data analysts who do statistical models. There are plenty of data scientists. Every data scientist has had to clean data at some point in their life. Like, it's not this golden pedestal you're sitting on. And even like the title for me, data scientist, it doesn't really mean anything because I'm not doing what you would consider traditional data science day to day. Right. And so I think it's important that we sort of disassociate ourselves from the role and look from the title and look more at what is the requirements for the job. What is the job asking me to do? Is this something I want to do? Because it's very easy to get wrapped up in all the title stuff, and they don't really mean anything anymore.
That's very true, actually. So thank you for sharing. Moving towards the next question is around the data science again. That what is your favorite algorithm, if any, and why?
That's funny. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think random forest is just so simple and clean, and most of the time gets the job done.
Yep. Random forest is till now the 100% win, actually. Everybody answered random forest.
Because it's just a really good algorithm. Even like XGBoost is good, right?
Yeah.
XGBoost takes too long. I really like random forest. Yeah.
And that makes sense as well, actually. As you mentioned, it is simple and it gives you the more insights easily. Moving on, one more thing actually I came across when I was visiting your profile. So that was something related to the Banana Data podcast, which DataIKU hosts.
Yeah.
Would you like to share more about it?
Yes, of course. So the Banana Data podcast started, last year sometime, actually around this time last year. And so the marketing team at DataIKU approached me and my colleague Will and said, we want to start a podcast. You guys want to host it. So that was really fun. We're now recording our 3rd season.
Nice.
So it's all available on iTunes, Spotify, all those things. And we really do target people who are either data adjacent or like trying to enter this field. It's meant to be sort of gentle introductions to these bigger concepts and discussion of interesting things happening in the space, and it's not for like the hardcore data scientist who wants to hear an hour of discussions of neural net architecture. Because I'm not interested in that.
Actually.
Right. And so, I encourage folks to check it out. It's really good. And then starting this week, we're going to be doing LinkedIn Live for a few, I don't know if it's like, I don't think it's every week. It's maybe every other week or something. And it's called Banana Bites. So if you follow DataIKU on LinkedIn, then you'll see all of those updates.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, actually. And people, please do, actually, because I listened a couple of episodes and those are awesome. So
thank you.
Please follow that podcast. And I use DataIKU as well. So
oh, great. Awesome.
So moving towards your skill set, you already mentioned Python, actually, but still I would like to, like, you learned both the languages, actually, R as well as the Python. So what is your favorite programming language and why?
That's such a loaded question, right? Because there's like this big divide and big fight, and I think it's silly.
But it's a clear differentiation, actually, why people go for R and not Python, but still I would like to hear from you.
So I think people who go for R are more looking for hardcore statistics and time series, different kinds of modeling. But when it comes to machine learning algorithms, I would argue that the Python scikit-learn library is very good. Of course, there are good libraries for machine learning in R as well. I do think that the Python implementations are considered more standard across industries. And that's why people tend to go towards that. The other thing that, I love R. It was my first language. It's like it really does like have a special place in my heart. But I will say that for developers, for people who aren't actually working with R, but need to work with people who use R,
Mhm.
it can be very difficult to program,
Mhm.
with it. There's a lot of dependencies. There can be a lot of issues there. And frankly, it's because it was a language designed by statisticians. So
Mhm.
it is, there are naturally going to be limits, right? Versus Python, which is truly an object-oriented programming language. But I love R and Python equally, so I'm not going to pick a side.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, every language has their own benefits and like advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
So totally depends upon what kind of a use case you're working on and what you're looking exactly. Moving towards one more question, which is like very suitable for you because you belong to like a non-programming background. You didn't come from the engineering background, computer science or something, and you entered into the, you started learning the programming. So what steps one has to take actually to learn any programming language according to you?
Yeah, so I think it's so different for everybody. So it's funny, my husband is a computer scientist by training. So he'll always like talk to me about like XYZ or this. And I'm like, no, I didn't learn it like that. I just do it. And so it's funny because I think people coming from very traditional backgrounds, they're taught a way of thinking about problems
Mm-hmm.
that then translates into their code.
Mm-hmm.
And when you learn programming on your own without that sort of structure,
Mm-hmm.
your approach is much more like, okay, how do I get this done?
Yeah.
And less so, how do I make this the most efficient, elegant, beautiful code in the world? So I started when I was doing R, first I was just like Googling all the time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want a graph. How do I make my pretty graph?
Yeah.
Um, but then when I moved to Python, I did a lot of like these intro courses that was like Python for everybody. I think there's like a Python for everybody or like Python the hard way, which is like an online thing and
Uh-huh.
it's free. You can just follow it. You can do the Python right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically gives you that introduction into, okay, what is this language like? What are the rules of this language? And then as you understand the rules, you can then try to apply them and see where they break, where they don't break, and learn more that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a couple of good resources actually you mentioned, I feel. So people who would like to check it out, please do check out. I also need to check out actually. I did not heard about this Python for everyone, so definitely I'll check out that as well.
I think that's on Coursera, and then Python the hard way is free. That's just like its own website.
Mhm.
I'm the kind of person who learns by doing. If
Yeah.
you're the kind of person who learns by reading, then you have to find the right book, or like the
Oh,
O'Reilly books are very good.
yes. And moving towards specific use case, interesting use case or the finding that you did around data science or machine learning,
Hmm.
would like to share with the audience.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of like client stuff that I can't necessarily talk about, but we did do a project that was trying to use the camera on your computer to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I'm going to hold up like a piece of paper or something, or I'm going to hold up this little thing. Take a picture and tell me, is this trash or can I recycle it?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really fun because there aren't a lot of, there's like the pre-trained models for image recognition are very, obviously very generic.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a data set of labeled like trash and recycled data. So there was like 100 points of like pictures of things that were trash, pictures of cardboard, pictures of plastic, etc. So I got to actually like retrain the neural network, the few last layers, to teach it about, okay, these are the things that we're trying to understand,
Mm-hmm.
trash or recycle or cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was really fun because it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see the neural network actually change and become better
Mm-hmm.
once we retrained it on new data. And then as we started using the app more and showing it to people and all those pictures were getting collected,
Mm-hmm.
I took those pictures back into the original retraining and then added them as more data points to retrain the model. So the model would improve.
Yeah, pretty interesting actually. Is there any blog or something that?
No, we don't have a blog on this specific project, but I believe that there we have like deep learning with DataIKU. That's if you just Google that, you'll
Mhm.
see. I think that blog post will come up.
Okay, that's great actually to check it out. And moving towards one more question actually somebody asked is about if someone wants to move to the data science profile, what skills should that person needs to focus in next 2 years, kind of.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think all those standard things of like Python and algorithms and all those things, or R, whatever you're looking to do, I think that matters. But I really think it's more about, let's say you're in a job right now, where you don't necessarily do data science, but you
Mhm.
have data or you're working with data. Start learning how to build insights from that. You don't need a fancy algorithm. You don't need tons of data or big terabytes or anything. You just need to know how to understand your use case or understand your problem, and how can you use data to help address it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great actually to know as well. And actually, the kind of field we are in right now, actually, it is kind of evolving as well.
Right.
So whatever you mentioned, those are kind of a basic skill sets that you always going to be there. And apart from that, there will be always something new coming up. Actually, that's why people are more interested into this field, and everybody is learning actually every day something new. So it is not like a stable environment right now, but definitely there are a lot more to come.
Yeah.
This field. Moving, like, you are truly leading your space actually, because you're a lot more active as well, not only just day-to-day job, you do the keynote speaking. So what is your leadership style, and any specific leader that you follow or always admire?
I I think my style is very much like, everybody, guess what? There's a big thing we have to fix. And then I just like run off and start doing it. I don't know if that's necessarily the best style. I'm trying to learn to be more of a leader from the middle of the pack now too, and say like, okay, I see this problem. What do you think? How can we build together?
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of that inspiration for me has actually come from Elizabeth Warren. I find her to be just like an amazing leader, an amazing woman who's taken the time to hear from voices that don't get heard a lot, and make sure that their goals and their visions are given the same importance as like the most common ideas.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing actually.
Sure.
Because people just sometimes hesitate to mention somebody's name. And I'm like, it's fine actually. If you follow somebody, it's like always you find something unique about that person. And that's why you admire that person for.
Yeah.
It is not required always that it is like a very famous or the public figure. You can find something which is in your day-to-day job as well. But always you find and something like, you aspire for. Like, I would like to be that kind of a person one day.
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing. Moving towards one more thing is about taking leaderships in the area you are interested in. So what do you think are the basic steps required, like,
Mhm.
to take those leaderships? It's always the proactive thing actually when it.
It is about being proactive, and I think I learned sort of the hard way that it's less about going to someone and saying, okay, I want to do this and I'm going to be this,
Uh-huh,
because they'll say, okay, well, you haven't shown me why, right? And so being able to go out and say, okay, I am going to build this
uh-huh,
system or this project, or I'm going to come up with these ideas and write about them, blog about them. That's where I think you can show your interests and your passions. And if you're doing that
uh-huh.
with confidence, people will notice, right? And that's like, honestly, and I think that's why I've found myself in like things like these keynotes, things like the podcast, is just because I'm just very vocal and I just say, hey, like, I know stuff about this, you should ask me. And then
Yeah.
we're like, oh, okay, great. So don't, if you feel very confident, or if you know that you have something to add, which you probably do, you should feel confident in adding it.
Mm,
um, but it doesn't always have to be like speaking, right? Because not everybody is a speaker, not everybody wants to be on stage, but maybe it's writing very good blogs, maybe it's writing cool code, great visualizations. You can find your niche.
yes, that's very true actually. Some people are good at talking, some people are good at writing, some people are good at articulating, but not able to convey that to the people. But still it is something that you can create
Yeah,
for yourself. And it's very important sometimes actually, if you have some idea which can bring value to the table, it's very important that you are a leader in that space, like, you just communicate that to the
right.
people. So it's important in any way you can communicate. It is not required that you always have to speak up, but there are ways to you have to learn which you can convey to the people as well.
And I think learning, for me, learning when to maybe not jump in, maybe not try and be always in
Mm.
front has been important too, because that again gives space to other people.
Yeah.
And it like gives me an opportunity to keep like reflecting and improving my own like
Mm.
ideas.
Yep, yep, that's true. So thank you. Moving to the last question of this podcast is more about tips and advice. You already gave a couple of actually good courses as well as a couple of resources online to learn the programming language. But any specific tips or advice for the students actually who are already pursuing the education to get into this field, data field, or there are professionals actually who are looking to change their career and enter into the data space? Any tips or advice would you like to mention?
So if you're a professional already working somewhere, you're in a very good position to be able to say, I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff about this industry. Now I want to understand how to use the data or whatever I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
That is very clear path.
Mm-hmm.
For students, it's a very different kind of thing, because most students are not going to have a lot of experience on their resume, frankly.
Yeah.
So in that case, it is really about, getting good internships, getting good volunteer opportunities, building out your side projects, building out your GitHub repository. The open source world, like the code base for Python and R and all these things, they're quite robust, and you can really make a good name for yourself there by being an active participant. But also, like, you don't need to immediately like come out of your degree or whatever you're doing and say like, okay, I need to be senior data scientist at Google, right? Like that's not going to happen. So be okay with taking the time to get there. I was a data analyst for 2 years, right? And now I still don't consider myself a data scientist, right? This is like the title that's been given to me, but I'm more like this like hybrid thing. And so be open to different kinds of experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
So very valid point actually, because this data space is so much evolving that one industry can define the data scientist role and the other industry can define it in a different way.
Yeah.
So you never know, like what you are going to do in that particular job role, what would be your roles and responsibilities. So be open actually.
Right.
Whatever learning opportunities you will get, it's better to learn in that particular role and then move ahead.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And it was really a pleasure talking to you and seeing you back again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's all my pleasure. And hope audience, you will also enjoy this episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together. Bye.